Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today I have another phenomenal guest from the Eastern United States, Rhonda Peoples, and I met her just on a networking call with a bunch of other people. And there was a lot of people on that call. I think 25 people. But out of everybody, there was only a few people, one who reached out to me, but two that I actually thought would add value to my audience. And so that's one of the reasons I actually said yes to her is let's see what value we can create today for you, the listener, so you can improve your life and have a better direction towards your goals. So Rhonda has worn lots of different hats, throughout her career. Everything she really likes getting into the helping people and leadership communicate better. She's an innovative business developer, and she has a coaching business that leads women. I'm going to say women specifically, but these principles, just don't get in your mind that these are only for women. Success principles are for everybody. But she leads women to help discover their own greatness and recognize their breakthrough of their personal glass ceilings, so that they can claim and create a 6 to 7 figure income. So if that's somebody that sounds like you, hey, you're kind of on the edge, you're thinking, man, I really wish that I could really take my life to the next level. And maybe it's 6 to 7 figures of something else. Maybe it's not money, although I think if you start adding enough value, money's going to come.
Absolutely.
But think about, well, what drives me? And if I could 10x or 100x what drives me, if it's love, great. What if you experience 10 times more love or 100 times more love? If it's contribution, what if you experience 10, 100 times more contribution, right? Some people, they like money as a gauge. That's okay. But don't think money is the objective, because it's not. Money's a tool. And that's why I want to bring Rhonda on here, because she deals specifically in helping you understand your personality and other people's personality and how to make that value exchange the most it possibly can be. So Rhonda, thank you so much for taking the time. We had some rescheduling and I'm glad we made it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, go for it. And tell us a little bit about your childhood and kind of how did you get to where you are? Why are you so passionate about this right now?
Well, I was born and raised in, really, I'm going to say, Osceola, Indiana. Some people might know South Bend a little bit better, Notre Dame. So I was born there. My parents had 6 kids, right? I'm the oldest of all the 6 kids. And we kind of had like a little bit of a 10-year span in between the first 3 kids and the second 3 kids. Mostly girls. All of us are girls. The very last one's a brother. God bless him. And so that's kind of how we started. And my dad was in sales. My mom was a nurse. She worked in a hospital. And so that was kind of my home life. I was in sports. My mom and dad kind of ran a lot of my sports things. We were in softball and different stuff like that. I was in volleyball and basketball. I'm tall. I'm 6'1". So it's probably hard to tell right now, but I'm 6'1". Wow, so I was in the tall girl. I was in the tall girl sports, for sure. And so, kind of raised in what I thought was a dysfunctional family, right? Come to find out, it was really just raised in a common family. That happens. We always just think it's us. And then from there, I just did a lot of odd jobs. I really fell into sales. It's very interesting because I never knew what my dad did until I was probably in high school. I knew that he just left really early in the morning. He came home really late at night, but he was in the sales game. And so I got involved in some factory stuff, at a young age. And then in my later 20s, I moved to Arizona and got involved in the automotive industry. So I was a single mom. My daughter was 2, and I needed a job. And I didn't really care where that I was going to end up. And so I ended up in a car dealership, and did like a 3 or 4 hour interview. And I was scared to death because I watched salespeople stand outside, right, and talk to strangers. And in my head, I wasn't very important, and nobody wanted to talk to me. Like, I didn't have anything important to say, and it didn't matter anyways. Those were the two phrases that I lived the majority of my life. And so I walk into a car dealership where you dress up really nice and then you stand outside. And so when I got hired, standing out there in front of the automotive industry, in front of the dealership, cars used to pass by. And I remember thinking, man, I know what it feels like to be a prostitute now, right? Because I just felt like everybody driving by was going, look at that girl. Why is she standing out there? And then, of course, I'm tall and I had heels. So I was probably about 6'5". I was the only woman. And I didn't like numbers, right? I have stories around when I was young that the math teacher used to pull my ear, right? So I hated math. So now I'm putting together car deals that involve numbers. And I'm walking up and having conversations with strangers. So I was petrified, but I was a single mom. And at the time, I didn't have a car. So I literally would grab my daughter at 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd get on a bus. I'd drive across town to drop her off at a daycare. My mom was a nurse at the time, so I got free daycare. So I was going to the daycare. So I would drive across town. We would run right to the back of a parking lot where this daycare was, because the bus would go up and it would turn around. I was pretty close to the turnaround. So I had to get the bus on the way back. Otherwise, I was going to be late to work. So I'm in heels, nylons, dress. I'm running my daughter, right, to daycare every single morning, and she's screaming because she doesn't want to go to daycare. And then I get to work, right? And then we do the nighttime, right? After work, I'd get on the bus and I'd do the same thing, only backwards, picking her up. And so I did that for several months in the beginning of my automotive tenure. I ended up being in the automotive industry for 22 years. I started on the floor as a salesperson, and then I got into finance and become the director of finance. So working with a lot of numbers, but it's really all about people. I was very driven and proving. I was very much in my proving stage of my life at that time, proving to everybody that I could do it, proving that I didn't need a man in my life, proving that I could raise my daughter on my own, proving that I was just as good as any man there, proving that I could be the best salesperson, proving that just everything I did. And so that's a big drive. I made 6 figures for a very long time, had a custom built home that I built, driving a Lexus, all types of, my shoe closet was quite full, and I had all the purses that I needed. And I wasn't happy. And so it was right around that time where I started to get sick and had some medical issues, ended up having to have a hysterectomy. And during that time, they found cancer, ovarian cancer. And right when I came back to work, which was only 3 weeks later, because in the automotive industry, like, you don't stay away very long. I go back to work. They set me down and they had a conversation with me that I could either go back in sales, right? Or I could find another job. Now, I don't even know what type of cancer I have at this time, right? Like what stage of cancer I have. And I've lost my job. And so it was really a time for me to dig deep and to find out who I was, because I walked out of there going, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I really want in life. And I knew that I wasn't, with all the wonderful thing, all the money I had, I wasn't happy. I just wasn't happy. So I started diving into personal development. I started reading books, tons of books, doing workshops. I learned how to meditate. And then I got involved with a company called Landmark Worldwide. And it is a personal and professional growth and development courses. They've been around since the 80s. And that started my journey in 2016, where I really started uncovering who I was and really disseminating the stories that I told myself constantly. As I had found myself in a new industry, I'm out networking because I never did that in the automotive industry. I was always at work. And so now I'm out of the automotive industry and I'm stepping into creating my own business. And now I'm at networking. And so I'm going to places and I'm finding groups of people that are coming around. They're talking about their businesses, right? They're soliciting for business and so on and so forth, which was a whole new world to me. I sat back and I noticed that most of the women that stood up had their heads down when they were talking. You couldn't hear them. They were very, very quiet, right? And I was just discounting them. They would stand up. I couldn't hear them. I didn't understand what they said. And I was like, okay, she's not going to have a business. Oh, yeah, no business. That'll be gone in 6 months, right? I was being very judgmental. And then one day it hit me and I was like, Rhonda, you can make a difference for these women, right? And this is as I get deeper into my own personal development and I really start opening up, getting rid of my fears, right? And really becoming who I am from my heart. I got out of my head and down into my heart. And I started recognizing, wow, Rhonda, people listen to you. Like I would be telling my story and having conversation in these growth and development courses, and women would come to the bathroom and go, I have the same thing. Like I've dealt with the same thing. And it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming to the point I'm like, Rhonda, are you listening? Like these women are listening to you. I was shocked. I had women say, you're such a powerful speaker. And I'm like, I don't know how to speak. I don't use the English language sometimes. Sometimes I make up words when I'm talking, right? And so I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about. And I've had so many people struck by my conversations that I started to say, you know what, Rhonda, even if you don't believe it, just believe them. Just pretend that you're an influencer, that people are listening to you, and be that. Like it's really who we're being in the world. And so I really started being that in the world and started reaching out to women and coaching them in the world of sales. A lot of people hate the word sales. A lot of people have a certain connotation that comes up when they say sales. And I knew that there weren't enough women in the world making 6 and 7 figures. And I knew I could help change that because it's in the world of sales. And so one of the most natural things that we do as women is we collaborate, we create teams, we create relationships, we love people. It's all about a win-win situation. And sometimes we kind of step over and get nervous around money or when we're asking people for business. So I knew that I could make a difference. So that's what I really started doing. So I started coaching women and making a difference in their business. I created a couple of women's groups in Tucson, Arizona that I've had women that never thought they could hit 6 figures, hit 6 figures. I had women speaking about their business with their face up, speaking into the crowd where people could hear them. Like they had the confidence of who they were from the women's groups that I created. And it was really a supportive groups that really talked about business. What does it mean to be in, all of that stuff made a huge difference. And so as I continued on my path of being on the court of personal development, and when I mean being on the court, I mean having a coach. I had my own coaches, right, that would push me out into the middle of the street, right, to really go, what are you going to do now? Okay, in real life. And so it gave me the opportunity to really see myself in a different light and see myself in a way that I've never seen myself before. So we listened to a lot of these videos. We listened to a lot of the books that are rah, and they're like, be tougher, be harder, work stronger, don't give up, all this other stuff, which I listened to all those also. But it didn't make a difference until I got all my crap out of my way. So you said, give me the story of kind of where you started, right, as a child. And unless we do the work to really understand that as we go through life, just naturally, we're making decisions based on, we go into our little filing cabinet and go, okay, last time I did this, what did I do? Well, if last time you did something or made a decision was bad, right, you now have a fear around that, right, because of your past. And so really working with people to be able to separate themselves from their past and make decisions going forward newly is something that was new for me. And so I share it with everybody. So I got involved in a lot of communication courses. Then I came across Bank, Codebreaker Technology, which is all about communication. It's all about being in the world of sales and within 60 seconds, knowing the personality language of the person that you're talking to because they told you what it was, right? And then being able to speak to them in such a way that you can get more yeses than no. Because in sales, they always say, well, you got to go through all the no's to get to the yeses. Well, that's BS. It's not true, right? It's just because we have one way of speaking. And so when we meet that person that lines up with how we speak, they're going to be a yes, because they're right in line with how we're delivering, what our presentation is, so on and so forth, right? The other personalities that are not like, we turn them off. Like one of the things about an action person, I'm an action person, is that, I don't want to hear all of the details. I want you to get to the bottom line. I want to know what my choices are. What are my options? Okay, I'll make a choice. We'll go right now. Where other people need to get information and walk away. And if you put any pressure on them, right, they're going to be very kind because they don't like confrontation. They're going to be very kind to you. They're going to say, thank you so much for everything, and I will definitely get back with you. And they're MIA, right? So if you know that ahead of time, right? So you come in prepared, right? I'm just going to give you, Sam, if you're one of those people, Sam, I'm just going to give you a file and say, Sam, this is all the information we went over. I know you've got to go do your own research. So I'm going to give you some additional stuff to go look over. And then I'm going to call you on Thursday at 2:00, or is 5:00 better, right? I mean, just work that out. And then they appreciate that. But if you don't know that ahead of time, you're probably stepping on people a little bit, right? So that's why I loved Codebreaker Technology. And I've had parents come to me and tell me the difference that it made in their relationships with their kids. Because we raise our kids as our kids with our personalities, right? And you have some kids, it rubs them. It's not right? You have a kid that you want to play sports because you played sports and you're out there and you're competitive and you're like, come on. And they're really not. They really want to be in their room playing games, surfing. What's the word? Gaming. It's a new word, right. New technology, right? They would rather be gaming than be out on the field being competitive, right? But if you don't know that, and so this particular mom, that was her scenario. So it really made a huge difference for her. So I became a trainer with Codebreaker Technology. So I use that in every single thing I do. I'm also VP of sales in the hemp industry, right? Hemp as in CBD, bioplastics, right? Making a difference in the world as opposed to the petroleum plastic, into plastic that you can literally put in your backyard. You can bury it and it will degrade, as opposed to the recycle that we do. So I do that also.
You mean things don't get recycled, Rhonda?
Yeah, it's so funny. It was so funny. My dad
doesn't do anything.
I know. It's just an extra charge that you're paying for because it really
know.
doesn't happen.
I know. For me, it's more space for trash. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's additional container.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, in my training and development, one of the things that I came across was creating a game in the world that was bigger than myself and having to learn how to create a team. And this was a 2-year program. And during that is when I decided I was going to write a book. And I reached out to a girlfriend of mine who is an awesome storyteller. Like, you're on the edge of your seat listening to her conversation constantly. And I said, Deb, you'll never believe I'm going to write a book. And she was like, oh my God, with your connection with women and your story, like, let's make a collaborative book. And so that was the beginning 3 years ago. We started in 2020, where I brought a group of 15 women together and we started creating our first Empowering Women with Words book, which is Life-Changing Conversations. That's our first book. It is almost ready to be released. We are at the end of our second book, Empowering Women with Words. I can't remember what the tagline is to the second one. They just made up their mind about it not very long ago. But we'll have a series because we have determined that the first women that came together, the majority of those women stayed with me and said, you've got something here. We have a business. Let's create a business. So we've created Empowering Women Alliance. So if you go to empoweringwomenalliance.com, that's our website. Okay. And we brought that together because we inspire women to be authentically self-expressed and unapologetically powerful. That's not natural for us, right? You got to get all this stuff out of the way. So that's what we do. And we do it through authorship. We bring women together. We meet every single week. For the last 3 years, I have met women for an hour or 2 hours for the last 3 years. So we've got our second book. We've got a bunch of ladies lined up for our third book and ready on the empowering women. And then we're going to do some other books out there also. We've got workshops. We've got weekends. We have all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome.
In that arena. Yeah. So what inspires me about all of this is knowing myself differently and sharing with other people, not just women, but other people, that it's there. We use excuses. Like I used to always say I'm an introvert. I had all kinds of reasons, right? And when you say you're an introvert, everybody in the group is going to go, right? I'm with you. I can't do that either. And they all have reasons why, right? And so we're all justified. We're all justified. When reality was, there was an incident that happened when I was in 8th grade that I stood up in front of the entire school to give a speech, to be secretary of the school. And I started to give my speech and I woke up in the nurse's office. I had passed out in front of the entire school. Now, if you remember, right, back in the day, Sam, how old are you?
I'm 30.
Okay, so you may not have this experience.
So I never went to public school, so I probably did.
Okay, so and I'm the only one that went to public school. Everybody else went to Catholic school. So you may not have had this experience, but our lunchroom, right, is the same room as the auditorium. So we would go to lunch in a room that had this great big huge stage. It was a big wooden stage. So all I could do is imagine hearing my head hit that wood. Right? And so when I woke up in the nurse's office, I told myself, oh my God, I can't speak in front of groups of people. And Sam, I lived the majority of my life that way. saying that I couldn't do it. Funny, I always ended up in management positions where I needed to have group meetings, or I would stand in front of a group and do trainings. I was mortified, palm sweaty. I did all kinds of different things before I had to go out and speak to a group of people. It was ugly, very ugly. I had to do a test in front of a camera. When I watched the recording, it was the first time. I blacked out through the entire thing. I had no recollection of what I said. Now, it was wonderful. It came out perfect, but I had no recollection. So I was a serious, I can't talk in front of groups of people. I've disappeared that. I don't have it anymore. Now, I get nervous, right? I get nervous before I get in front of a group of people, but I don't have it that I can't do it. Right. I literally am able to speak from my heart now.
And I think that most people who are struggling with, speaking in front of people, but I think it's just in general, when we're struggling with something, thinking that we can't do it, as you mentioned, it almost always relates to childhood. And when it does relate to childhood, that's simple. I say it's a simple fix. Okay. But at the end of the day, it's perspective. And oftentimes the people who have those issues and end up doing those roles anyway, they end up being way better than the person who comes naturally to the situation, who doesn't have to put in any work. Because I would say, and maybe it's just my definitions of introvert versus extrovert and what I understand of them. In most cases, I would say I'm an introvert. And also most of the most successful people I know are also introverted, in that our source of energy isn't from large groups of people. Our source of energy and rejuvenation is from either small, intimate groups or quiet time by ourselves. That is how I would define an introvert. That has absolutely no bearing on your performance or what you're able to achieve or accomplish. It's just simply a recognition of how you recharge. That's it. Like it has nothing to do with your capabilities, your skills, or anything, or what you're capable of. It's simply, how do you recharge? And knowing that about yourself, I think, is as beneficial as knowing how to communicate with yourself or somebody else, right? You do need to know what recharges you.
Yes.
But what recharges you doesn't define how you use your energy.
Right.
And that's where people often make the misconception. And then, as you say, they start using excuses to dismiss their confidence or their ability simply because, somebody else dismissed it. And so if I just tag on that train, then I don't have to confront my own inadequacies. And it's so much easier to avoid your own inadequacies and to blame somebody else for your own inadequacies than to deal with it yourself.
Well, that's the world we live in, right? We live in the world that is somebody else's issue. It's not my responsibility.
Absolutely. I mean, it was 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It was Christmas time, and I've got 3 little children, a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 1.5-year-old now. But at that time, I just had been 4 and 2 or 5 and 3 or whatever. And we bought all these cool Christmas things with them we bought them with the intention of like, hey, I want to be able to do things with my children and to create a relationship. So it was an intentional purchase that would demand me help them so that I could build a relationship with them. That was like the intention behind it. Well, we start to do it and they're 5 and 3 years old. So how long do you think that attention span is? Even in the best of times, it's like 5 minutes.
Right.
At the best of times, like even if they're actually interested, it just, their attention span isn't that long. Well, I'm sitting there and my attention span is a lot longer and I'm objective oriented and I want to get it done because I want to see it created. I want to see it work. And, so it's like Legos type thing where I'm like, hey, we got the instructions. There's 1,000 Legos here. Let's put them all together. Let's build this sucker. And you can play with it in an hour. Right. And they made 5 minutes and then they wanted, and then here's the real failure in my part, is I've got this set of instructions. And so if we want the end outcome to look like the instruction says it is, then we got to follow the blueprint, which it seems like is your least valuable thing.
Right.
Everything. So I'm like, we got to stick to the blueprint. Right. And they are getting creative with the toys that they have. They said that blueprint's not important anymore. We're 5 minutes in. Let's just have fun. Right. And me, it's like, no, we can't have fun because we're building this. Right. Fun is once Once it's done, then we have fun with it. We have fun because it's complete, right? And that was for a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. That's just not their version of fun. And so I saw, I started to see myself getting frustrated and angry, not at them per se, but like, hey, don't touch that. It was a toy I got for them so they could have it. Hey, don't touch that. Like,
I'm trying to put this together.
I'm trying to help you. Anyways, and finally I was like, whatever, we're going to put it in bags so that I can calm down. And then I went and started just destroying boxes from Christmas, which needed to be done. It had to be done. Right. But I went and did something that I had complete control over and was absolutely submissive to what I wanted it to happen. Like I was going to destroy that box, and full warrior mode. We're getting crap done. I want to accomplish something because I feel very unaccomplished with this thing that just got cut short. I'm going to go accomplish something. And as I'm doing it, I'm analyzing, okay, I'm getting frustrated. And at the same time, what was really fascinating was at the same time we had my sister who was slowly dying of cancer, right? She's like 4 years
Sorry to hear
cancer,
that.
right? She's got like 3 or 4 months left. And she was staying with us. And so on top of the inability to really connect with my child, I was also subconsciously struggling with the fact that I struggle in scenarios that I have no control over. And like, I'm watching suffering happen and you can't do anything. Like when somebody's struggling with that, I mean, you went through cancer as well. Like when somebody's struggling with that, the best thing they can do is sit there and hold your hand and like say, hey, we hope it all works out, which is miserable for anybody who wants to help, right? They just can't do anything. And so for me, my own inability to deal with the fact that I couldn't do anything. There was nothing I could do to help was the underlying like festering. And then it's coming out completely unintentionally on my children with their present that I got them. But really the underlying thing was my lack of ability to serve and help in the way that I would want to in a completely different relation, completely different area.
Because you were totally attached to the outcome, where your children were not attached to the outcome. They were like, Dad, thanks for the toy. They didn't realize it wasn't put together. They didn't realize that it was supposed to look a certain way. Right. They were just having fun. Like they were just like, cool, let's play.
And so that anyways, it was as I'm breaking down these boxes, I've been doing personal development. My parents went to Landmark probably before I was born. So that I was raised with a lot of cognitive analyzation of like who I'm being and how I'm being, how I'm showing up. So in so many levels, I'm grateful for that, but that I'm still human. I still like go through my cycles. I'm like, okay. So I caught myself within 30 minutes of the whole experience. I caught myself and like, okay, this is what's really happening, And I think it's wonderful to have the mental presence to even understand what's really happening. And then able to go in and talk to my sister and like, look, this is where I'm at emotionally. I love it. And the end result was, and the end result was that she ended up not staying with our family the rest of our life for multiple reasons. But it was something that I couldn't handle. I was like, that's not a battle that Samuel's prepared to fight today, is watch my sister die. I don't want to remember her that way. And I'm grateful. I'm the 7th of 11 kids. I'm so grateful that my parents and other siblings had the emotional fortitude to be with her through the last stages of her life. Like, I'm so grateful for that, because for me, it just wasn't there. Like,
I heard you say you spoke to her though. So you communicated that with her.
Oh yeah.
Right? She knew, and as opposed to making up her own stories about why Sam wasn't right there with her,
and
or Sam wasn't.
Trusted me to the end. And at the end, I ended up being the one who she left all of her everything to, because that was our relationship. But I was fully aware and I was able to communicate, here's my limitations. Like, I want to serve you, but this is how I'm able to serve you. I'd love to, serve, but that other areas, it's not, I can't do it, And thankfully I have a wonderful wife who my wife and her were like best friends. But that was really hard for me. And so ultimately she ended up going back up to Utah and staying with other family, and then Idaho. And, but it's just fascinating understanding how to communicate and understanding the things of your past. They don't have to define you. And so many people feel like their past has to define them, and yet they still do everything. So, I mean, you went You didn't like sales. You fell into it. You did it anyways, even if you felt like a prostitute. Guess what? I think one of my books, if it ever gets written, or if somebody else writes it, I'm cool with that too. I just think it needs to be written. Maybe you could write it. Okay. But here's the title. Here's the perfect title for the book. Okay. How to Escape Corporate Prostitution. That's the title. I keep saying it. I'm waiting for somebody to do it. But it's just corporate prostitution. You go to the highest bidder. You do whatever they say. Not literally, but you get on your knees for them. Do whatever you have to do to take a leg up. And then as soon as they're done with you, you're off to the next person. They just their highest bidder all the time, and they don't actually take investment in themselves. And the funny thing is, who holds the real value in prostitution? The person with the body. But they don't respect themselves enough to own what they know. Every W-2 wage earner is by definition underpaid for the value they're bringing to that company. At any point in time, when you start earning more than the value you're producing.
Well, the internet went down and it is no longer going to work for this podcast. But if you'd like to hear more of this conversation, reach out to me on either Facebook or Instagram, and we will get Rhonda back on so we can finish the conversation. We already have a number 2 planned. So if you have other questions for her, then reach out to me. I'll make sure and ask them when we do our second recording. You can always find her and reach out to her on social media as well. Rhonda Peoples is her name, and she is wonderful, willing to help any way that she can.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.